I'm Joseph Cervantes. I'm a member of the House.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry. But you said introduce yourself. So you want me to tell you why I'm running from the House and Senate?
Yeah.
Well, I think some of the greatest opportunities for Doña Ana County lie in the border communities. And the promise of Doña Ana County for a long time has been the relationship between Santa Teresa, El Paso, Mexico. So I wanted to be able to be part of those relationships again. I was back when I was on the county commission. That combined with the need to consolidate the relationships between those communities in the rural part of the county with, frankly, with Las Cruces itself. This is a district that is about half rural and half within the city of Las Cruces really itself. And so there's a great opportunity there to try and bring those two communities a little closer together and develop a better relationship between the city and those rural communities.
My name is Cervantes-Segura. I'm actually a lifetime resident of the Mesilla Valley, in particular Sunland Park. I attended Gaston High School, which is the South Valley, and also I'm a graduate from New Mexico State University. At New Mexico State University, I obtained a master's degree in public administration with a minor at the graduate level in criminal justice. I also have a bachelor's degree in criminal justice. Also a bachelor's degree in Spanish and foreign language, and supplementary major in law and society. And a minor in government. I was a city councilor, mayor pro tem, and mayor for 12 years in Sunland Park. I was also the chairman of the El Paso Metropolitan Planning Organization, which is basically an organization that deals with transportation planning in the southern portion of the county and also the El Paso area. And I was also part of the New Mexico Chihuahua. I was a board member, part of the New Mexico Chihuahua board member, and also the New Mexico Community Development Council board, where basically we provided grants to rural communities.
And just real briefly, why are you running for Senate?
I'm running because I think there's overall I want to represent both I think the urban and the rural areas. I think there's a lot of challenges, especially the fact that this district falls in the border with the Republic of Mexico and also with the state of Texas. I think there's a lot of challenges there, but also a lot of opportunities. I feel that to a certain extent the people from District 31 need a voice. They feel to a certain extent the district has been overlooked. There's certain infrastructural needs in the rural areas, in the smaller communities that really need that help, and I think that I'm here to stand strong for the families and the communities. In particular, we'll do job creation.
Try to keep it shorter.
Sure.
Yeah.
Job creation, economic development, and border development.
Okay.
Infrastructure.
Do you support the legislation that was introduced by Andy Nunez in this last session that would have prevented illegal immigrants from obtaining a New Mexico driver's license? And what other changes, if any, would you like to see in state law in terms of both immigration and border security issues?
Sure. I think the reality is that I think border security and the driver license issue is not necessarily an either-or issue. I think that I do not support Andy Nunez's legislation. I think that when I'm here to advocate for the families and the communities of New Mexico, I mean all New Mexico residents, and one of the things that I really stand strong for is that the immigration, I feel that this driver license is trying to circumvent the immigration issue. I think the immigration issue is something that belongs at the federal level. I think that at the federal level we need to debate that issue. We need to come to some form of consensus. We cannot have different communities or different states adopting different regulations. I think that it's going to go in front of the Supreme Court, so I think it's going to be defined more. It's going to be narrowed. The issue is going to be narrowed, and it's going to be defined a little bit more. So I feel that that if it's an issue of homeland security, an issue of security, I think we can definitely work towards it. I know that the Democratic Party had previously proposed certain bills and certain proposals that were there, but obviously the governor was not in support of some of those. But I think that we're willing and wanting to work at that end if it's going to close any loop in regards to the security aspect of it. But that doesn't mean that the cost of the families and the children will suffer as a consequence of that.
There's been widespread abuse of the existing policy in the state of New Mexico, and this is part of why the 15 states that originally started doing this, along with the state of New Mexico, have now all essentially repealed these laws. The only last remaining state that has the law similar to New Mexico is the state of Washington, where the Democratic governor there has said that they favor an appeal, or a repeal of that state's law. So that would leave New Mexico alone with the states exercising this policy, and that begins to jeopardize those who have driver's licenses all across the board here in the state. I agree that this is a federal issue, and the failure of the federal government shouldn't make it incumbent upon the states to begin trying to pass immigration laws. And so I strongly oppose what's happened in Arizona. I strongly oppose what other states like Alabama, Georgia, Utah, South Carolina, and other states are doing to try and adopt their own immigration policies. But to be consistent and logical, New Mexico cannot have its own immigration policy and then decry the other states that have anti-immigration policies in consideration. So to be consistent, we should be using our energies and our efforts to put the pressure on the federal government to address what is a solvable problem, and that's immigration. The reference to what's been called the Democrat plan, it's not really a Democrat plan, it's a small group of people who have proposed an alternative in New Mexico. I strongly oppose that because it would require immigrants to come in and be fingerprinted, to be booked, to identify themselves, to maintain their driver's licenses. I know, and I think everybody knows, that's not going to happen. And so that's a cruel, in my opinion, it's a cruel ruse to try and look like we're going to continue to issue driver's licenses, but we're really not. The immigrants in the country illegally are not going to come in to the Department of Motor Vehicles, declare themselves to be here illegally, stand in line, give their vital information, and then be fingerprinted. So really, frankly, all legislators have voted to repeal the current policy, some knowingly and some maybe not so much.
What proposals would you support to help children in grades 3 or lower catch up to their peers across the country, specifically in the area of reading?
Well, I think what we have to do is what I've been doing, which is to introduce legislation over the last 2 sessions to reform our school calendar. I have 3 children in public schools here in Las Cruces. I've seen what works and what doesn't work. One thing that doesn't work is a 3-month extended summer vacation where children lose a great deal of the momentum and information they've gained and then have to regain that after the end of the summer break. So I favor a much greater role of a year-round program. It would make greater use of our teachers, of our facilities, and greater efficiencies. So I've been working over the years to try and expand the school year and reform our school calendar. I think that's the first priority. I have tried to work with the governor and her secretary on some of their reforms. I don't think that they go very far. You know, we begin to try and arrest, I shouldn't use the word arrest, but if we try and stop children from promotion at 3rd grade, we're going to deal with the children that are now in kindergarten through 1st grade, but we're not at all tackling the children who are now in 4th, 5th, 6th, all the way through high school, and I'm not prepared to write them off.
I think education is definitely one of the greatest challenges that the state of New Mexico is facing. In particular, I feel that that if we're really going to address the issue about the 0 to 3 levels, I think we have to start at the very early stage. We should be focusing on early childhood, providing education. I think that if you look at some of the statistics in early childhood, kids are going into the school system with a very low vocabulary skills, and that by 4th grade or 5th grade they start losing interest, and that becomes a challenge within itself. I did notice that Chicago is also trying to expand their hours in regards to the amount of days, but statistically the research doesn't necessarily prove that extending the hours really contributes to the overall increase of knowledge in the children. I think that the most important thing is really to target the administration. For the past, I feel that we need to support teachers. The most important thing is that teachers right now for the past 4 or 5 years have not received any salary increases. I know we have had a challenge in regards to our budget, but I feel that we need to start changing the paradigm and teaching focusing on our teachers in regards to seeing them in the same eyes as we see our engineers and other professionals, because sometimes they're undermined because of the state challenges that we have. The other portion that I feel is also by supporting our teachers, I feel that we also have to help them in the classroom. In particular, we need to, when I was talking to some of the teachers and also some of the students, the teacher stand has a classroom of 30, 25 kids, and they really need to they need some support. And I think if you could get those students who are actually currently working to get their degrees to work as tutors. We have tutoring labs at New Mexico State University when you have challenges in regards to English or math. That should be also comparable throughout the community. Like, for example, in the Doña community colleges, that they have satellite branches. It should be open also to younger kids. So if they have those challenges, they could also be there and receive that service. And the last thing I would say is, I think we need to start really looking at the assessment aspect of it. We need to be, I think most of you who are administrators, you cannot assess an individual's performance just on a one-time basis. You have a multifaceted approach where basically you have to have different instruments that measure so you can cross-reference. And I feel that education, we have to really focus on that aspect of it and really focus on the administration aspect. I've seen, at least in the Gaston school district level, that we have seen increase in salaries at the administrative level, but I haven't seen it in the lower echelons, and I think that we need to bring some parity and some fairness at that level.
The state this past year, after having a down budget for the last 2 or 3 years before that, this past year they finally had a little bit of new money coming into the budget. As you look at the budget moving forward, if we continue getting a little bit of the pickup that we've seen in this last year, what do you think the priority should be for restoring some of the money that was cut during those times when the budget was down? And at the same time, are there other areas you think that could be cut?
Okay, sure. First and foremost, I think the first priority should be education. Second should be infrastructure development. You have communities that really do not meet the EPA standards in regard to arsenic level, and that should be a priority in regards to that. And also, we need to really focus on the quality of life on some of the residents in some of the areas that really are in substandard conditions, the colonial type situation. And the third thing I think we really need to focus on is economic development. We have to look at economic development seed money. There's with the border development. Unfortunately, the economy in New Mexico runs on an east-west type, where with the I-40 and I-25. We really need to focus on developing the border. We have to look at the successes of the state of Texas and also California, and how they have actually benefited from it. To a certain extent, we have not done that. I know the governor and some other leaders in the past, from Governor King, Johnson, and the other governors have really focused on that. But I think we have not taken it to that level. We need to really focus on putting an emphasis and get that going.
Okay.
And just one more thing. I think also the smaller rural communities have to be an integrated part of the economic development portion of it. I-10, we have not really exploited I-10 like El Paso has. If you look at the city of Anthony, Texas, even Vinton, I bet it has a budget greater than the town of the city of Anthony, New Mexico. We really need to exploit that, and really so that we can create jobs. We need to also have incubators in smaller communities, so economic incubators, so we can help them out and so they can benefit.
The greatest problem with our budget, Walt, is that we have put too much of our reliance on oil and gas revenues. This began about 8 or 9 years ago, and so in an effort to try and cut taxes on personal income, and cut taxes on gross receipts, cut taxes on food and medical supplies, what we did is we put more and more of the state's needs on oil and gas revenues. The problem with that, of course, is that that's cyclical and depends on economies that are beyond our control. And as a result, our budget swings wildly. So we have a budget where in some years we have to make very strong cuts, and then, as you're indicating, when there is an uptake in oil and gas revenues, then there's a desire, as you just suggested, to start spending again and go back to increasing spending. We need to level out our budgeting process and completely revamp our tax structure and tax code. That's where we begin with the budget. In terms of the budget priorities, we do need to go back and look at where we have made some huge cuts, particularly in higher education. Our universities around the state are not doing a good job of training students with the resources they have for the jobs that exist right now. And we need to reconsider that. We're looking at a new funding formula for universities. That's a good idea. And it's not a reflection on the lack of effort by the universities or the teachers, but frankly they just haven't been given the resources they need. We need to be putting a great deal of money back into our roads. The GRIP program was intended to put about $1.6 million in new highway and transportation. Did I say million? I'm sorry, 1.6 billion, thank you. 1.6 billion into highway and transportation. Instead it went to Rail Runner and other projects, and so the road needs didn't get met. I've worked hard. We've got the Colonias Infrastructure Act that will put about $13 million a year into our colonias. That's the equivalent of about $300 million of state investment over the long term. That's much bigger than spaceport, for example, but it's not being discussed, and we need to capture that money and put it to work.